Hello friends, Melly Pankadith here, CEO of the Sword Community Network and co-founder of Sword Community Nebula. The goal this year for us is to interview and feature 1,000 community champions and community builders. And today I have with us Pat Wirth. Pat, thank you so much for being a part of our community and being a part of this initiative.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of it. Thank you.
You're so welcome, and it's our honor. What we normally do is ask you to introduce yourself and the work that you're doing currently in the world.
My name is Patricia Wirth, and I certainly go by Pat. I am the executive director of the Turning Point Suffragist Memorial Association. It is a nonprofit that has been has had its roots go back about a dozen years. And our primary first project is to raise funds to build a national memorial to commemorate the millions of women who fought over 7 decades to win the right for women in America to vote. So it's a huge undertaking. It's difficult to raise money for women-centric projects, I have found. And yet everyone who eventually hears about us is very supportive of what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, that's the whole goal of sharing the message, right, and spreading that, because the moment people actually know it exists and the cause is there, then you get that level of support. Can I ask you another question? What is it about women's equality and women's right, and particularly this organization, that drew you to it? And why did you dedicate your time, your resources, your energy to really raise awareness around this?
Okay. Well, I think I have an advocacy gene that I was born with. And throughout my life, regardless of what I was doing or what job I was involved with, I always found issues and organizations that I gave back to. At one point, I owned and operated my own automotive service business, and giving back to the community was something that was very important to me. And my husband and I sold that business in 2013. And I literally took additional training and classes and became a certified nonprofit specialist, because nonprofits the world was always where my heart has always lied. I always loved giving back. That's something that's just been very important to me. And this particular organization, I didn't know very much about it. It happens to, where this memorial is going to be built, it just coincidentally is very close to where I live. But I didn't know about it. But a friend of mine, and we still to this day do not know how we know each other, had contacted me and asked me to go to a fundraising dinner about their organization and about the memorial. And I did, and I found it interesting. And they encouraged me to get involved. And the more I got involved, the more amazed I was at how little I knew about this significant part of history. When I do my presentations around the country, it's entitled "The Best Kept Secret in American History." And what I talk about is the suffrage movement. But what I've also found is that women in general in history in America are the best kept secret. As recently as 1980, when a survey was performed, it was determined that less than 3% of the content in our history textbooks is about women, that involves women. And now it's only 5%. And part of that, what that means is that our young girls have not had role models growing up in their everyday studies in school. But getting the vote, which was the first step for equality for women in this country, was extremely important. It led to doors opening for women in this country to be involved in many other things. And so this was the first step, and it was very, very important. But it took 72 years for it to happen. One of our historians refers to it as a bloodless revolution. And I think she was right.
I'm learning already.
Good.
5 minutes. Wow. Well, we're going to talk more about that as the interview goes along. The next question I have for you, Pat, is when in your life have you experienced a community builder or a change agent or a mentor that's really showed you additional love and kindness and empathy, maybe surprised you with it, to help shape you into the person that you are today?
Well, I've thought long and hard about that question, knowing that it was going to come up in this interview. And there aren't individual people. I think it's been a very collective thing for me. It's just, I've had an extraordinary opportunity to meet fabulous men and women throughout my career, throughout my life, who have all given me positive reinforcement and have kind of molded the person that I have become. And I've looked back at history to think in terms, well, is there any particular people in history or in, even in my personal wheelhouse that I could really just pinpoint? And probably I really couldn't. And I've thought very, very hard about this because I think it has been a very collective thing. I grew up in an Italian family, and, Italian families are very loving, very giving, a lot of fun to be around. And I think certainly that was part of the idea of giving back, because it was very giving family. When I look back on history, I think one of my champions, female champions, is Eleanor Roosevelt. She was probably one of the first ladies who used her position as first lady to do good, not only domestically for women, but internationally as well. And I've always admired the things that she was able to accomplish while her husband was in office. She was her own person, and I think that was great. And one of the other things I was thinking about women in general, like who has influenced me, is that we women, when we see that something needs to be done, we don't worry about it. We just roll up our sleeves and we start doing it. We get to it to do it. We see that there's a need, and we figure out, who might want to get on board with this particular issue and talk about it. And the next thing you know, we've got a movement, we're moving forward and we're making things happen. And I love that. And I'm very grateful that I've had people in my life that have encouraged me to do that. They've asked me to be involved in their issues. They've become involved with mine. And it's just made for a very, very rewarding life, a very rewarding career.
Wow. Isn't that the truth about women?
Mm-hmm.
I love being surrounded by strong, innovative, kind, driven women. It shapes you into who you are. And we're lucky to be in this community here in the Washington, D.C. area, because we have women who have strong voices and they're not afraid to share it.
Well, I agree. And that's been my experience. The last business that I had was located in Loudoun County, Virginia. And sometimes you hear about, women not helping other women, and that has not been the case for me at all. It's been just the opposite. It's been women pulling up women and helping them be successful and helping them achieve and helping give back to the community. And I've loved every minute of it.
That's great. Well, you're a big part of our community here, Pat, and you do roll up your sleeves and you get down and dirty and you speak loudly when you need to and you remain quiet when you need to. It's really a skill. Because you've been around so many champions and community builders, are there attributes and characteristics that are overarching, that are consistent, and that you've come to admire about these souls?
Yes, and interestingly enough, as you know, what I'm doing now is building a memorial to suffragists. And I can literally look at the parallels between the women of yesteryear and the women today in getting things accomplished. And that is the tenacity to get it done, never giving up, and continuing the fight and doing whatever it takes to get it done. I mean, can you imagine back in the 19th and early 20th century, they didn't have the technology that we do today. They didn't have, airplanes and highway systems and, fax machines and the internet to communicate with one another. But nonetheless, they were able to accomplish those things. And I just find it, I find it remarkable. And when I look at the parallels to today, to women today, you know, it's kind of the same thing. What do we need to do to get things accomplished? When we have a goal, who can we draw in to help us meet that goal? Or what other tools do we need to be able to achieve a goal? And I think that we women are really good at doing that. And I've been very blessed to have support.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, how are you utilizing your unique special gifts and talents and life experiences in your community today, beyond obviously this particular organization? Are there other causes or movements that you put your heart and soul into?
Oh my. Well, there are a couple that I continue to support and always will. One is Bite Me Cancer. That is a nonprofit that was started by a young high school girl who was diagnosed with medullary thyroid cancer when she was in high school. As a matter of fact, my husband and I just went to a fundraiser for that organization a couple of weeks ago. This young woman is now in her 20s. I mean, she still has cancer, but she's just moving forward and she's living life every single day. And that's an organization that I'm very supportive of. And another one is Final Salute. And this is an organization that was started by a female Army veteran who was able to determine that there were very few options for homeless female veterans on where to go and where to live, particularly if they had children. And she has started this organization to find housing for these women. And I'm very, very supportive of that organization. There is going to be a fundraiser for them later this month, and I will be there supporting that fundraiser as well. I'm never ceases to amaze me when we're looking at benefits in this country where there seems to be a division for men and women. This is an area that we now have had women in the military for decades, and yet the services that are available to them as veterans and even medical have not caught up. I mean, you know, if you're a woman in the military and you get breast cancer, you know, woe is me, because their doctors are not necessarily geared toward, you know, treating women with something of that nature. So this is an organization I'm very proud to be affiliated with. This was an organization that when I ran my automotive service business, we always gave back to them every November. Veterans Day was in November, so that's something I feel very, very strongly about. So I think those are the two that I feel pretty passionate about. I feel passionate about everything. I feel really passionate about both of those.
That's fantastic. Yes, they're wonderful organizations, and they've been able to sustain themselves. It's incredible to watch that here in the local area. All right, Ms. Pat Wirth, when you think about the trajectory of our lives and all of the years of experience, heartache sometimes, ups and downs, when things are not easy and they are tough and they're rough, how do you find yourself back to center? Is there a philosophy, a motto, or quote that really helps you move forward?
That's a good question, Molly. I'm a person that lives by a schedule. I have a calendar. And sometimes I recently was diagnosed with an incurable autoimmune disease early this year. And I just said, what do I need to do to get through this? And how do we handle it? And how do we manage it? And because I've got business to take care of and I've got things to do and people to see. And so I think it's getting back to the, you know, having to have tenacity and the wherewithal to keep moving forward. And I think that I'm very fortunate that once again, I have that advocacy gene where I just, you know, I'm always happiest when I'm giving back. And so when things are not great, when I can get myself back into a situation where I'm giving back, it makes me happy. I mean, that's where I'm probably the happiest. And you had asked me about a quote, and so I do have a quote I would like to read to you, if I may. This is a quote from Alice Paul, who was one of the suffragist leaders. And she, in addition to being one of the major suffragist leaders in the 20th century. She also happens to be the woman who wrote the Equal Rights Amendment. So she was very big on equality as well. And this is what she had to say about that. I never doubted that equal rights was the right direction. Most reforms, most problems are complicated. But to me, there is nothing complicated about ordinary equality. And that kind of sums it up, doesn't it? This should not be an issue. It's in America. There should not be an issue of equality for everyone in America, men and women, people of all religions, people of all races. That's how our country was founded. And so I love that saying because it speaks to my heart and how I feel, particularly with respect to my organization and trying to remember these women that fought so hard. Because one of the things people don't know is that until the 19th Amendment was passed and suffrage for women became the law of the land, women were not included in the Constitution. That's when we first were included in the Constitution. So I love what Alice Paul had to say. I mean, there should be equality for everybody.
I know that is so crazy every time I hear that, you know, that women were not included in the Constitution until then. Okay, last but not least.
Okay.
When you envision a better world, what does a better world look like through your eyes?
Oh, no, you know, eliminate as much suffering, physical suffering as possible. I mean, because of today's technology, you know, we see things happening in real time around the world. You know, we see children starving. We see disease. We see famine. We see that climate change is having an effect on our farmers and things like that. So, you know, for me, I would like to see whatever we can do to eliminate suffering, which once again would perhaps provide more equality of standard of living for people. That would be such a blessing to me.
It would be. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much for your contributions, not only to this interview, but more importantly to our community and to the ripple effect that you're creating every day when you wake up, Pat, and you give of your energy and your time. It makes a difference, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Molly.
You're so welcome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for following us. I hope that you enjoyed today's interview. I hope you learned a few things. I certainly did. And I hope that you really take some of these powerful insights, learn about the organizations that we're mentioning. You know, we always talk about wanting to create more impact. Sometimes we don't know what that means, but it looks like how to use your own gifts and talents. And perhaps it's really learning about all these organizations that have these processes in place. They just need your special touch, your energy, your love, and your resources. So please check them out. And also nominate yourself, nominate somebody in your community who's making a huge difference. Visit us at nebula.soarcommunitynetwork.com. Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you very soon.